guys, how's it going? Hope everything's going well. Hope your weekend went well. So in this video, I'm doing another response video to another YouTube channel. It's a guy named Eli the Computer Guy, or he changes his name a lot, his YouTube channel name, but I think right now he's going by Eli the Computer Guy, or it might be Failed Normal. And this is a tech guy who's been in the industry for like 20 years, and he's seen a lot of things, obviously, and he has a lot of strong opinions. And in this video, he did a brief sort of diatribe on staying relevant in tech, like how people have a short-sighted mentality about their position in technology, and they don't see in the long term how quickly they become obsolete and don't prepare for it, and they don't know that that's coming down the pipe. So I'll play the excerpt from his video first, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. So.
There's a lot of people, they graduated school, they had the right credentials to get tech jobs. And so basically, I call them computer flippers. Like, everybody puts them up on a pedestal. Like, wow, they're X, Y, or Z. But the thing is, I mean, they know how to code Node.js, or they know how to code for Alexa, or they know how to, right? Look, no, I don't have any issues with their actual technical skills. Their actual technical skill sets are fine. But my question is what happens when that's no longer needed? What happens when that particular skill, that the requirement for that skill set dries up? You know, a lot of people like to give me crap about being an old burnt out IT guy. But think about it for a second. I was an electronics technician in the US Army. After that, got my MCSE. I was an IT guy in the corporate world. After that, I became my own consultant. That built up to a place with my own employees. And then from there, I flipped over to doing technical education. And that's the thing I don't think enough technology professionals really think about, is what happens when this dries up. Fine, you're a Node.js developer, you're making a lot of money, things are going great. What happens in 5 years when Node.js is no longer the thing and it's the next thing coming down the pike? What do you do then? What happens when you get burnt out? Right, a lot of new techs, they think this is what I want to do all my life. I love coding, or I love doing X, Y, or Z. This is what I want to do my entire life. Let me tell you, you spend 10 years doing something, at a certain point, it gets tiring. You get tired of doing it, right? And so the question is, where do you hop off to next? And what I worry about for this current generation of techs is I question that progression. I question what happens when the massive layoffs happen and nobody else is hiring for that. Because that's what we see now, right? So yes, Twitter lays off a whole bunch of engineers, but then Snap is hiring. Snap lays off engineers, but Google is hiring. So a lot of these folks think they're solid. A lot of these folks are like, Eli, you're a moron. You don't know what you're talking about. Dude, I'm solid. I got laid off from Twitter. I got picked up in a day. I got laid off from Snap. I got picked up in a day. I got laid off from Boo. I got picked up in a day. Eli, you're a freaking moron. You don't know what you're talking about. But here's the question. What happens when the next recession happens? What happens when the domino falls from something like the crap happening in Saudi Arabia and the VC funding tap turns off? What happens when Twitter and Snap and Google and Facebook and many other companies lay off at the exact same time?
Okay, so a lot to unpack there. First off, I just want to be clear that I agree with him 100%. His perspective is very accurate in terms of how you should approach your career in the tech industry. And it's a big problem. I've met these people that Eli is describing where they've learned one thing and they haven't evolved past that. So, we're starting to see that wave right now with the boot camp graduates. Boot camps have been around for around 5 or 6 years now. It's 2018 as I record this video. Boot camps really didn't start picking up in popularity until around 2013 or 2012, 13, give or take. So if you look at it from that point of view, these boot camps all started with Ruby on Rails and just regular front-end JavaScript jQuery. And a lot of the guys who graduated from that point, started 5 years ago, they're still doing Ruby on Rails and haven't really evolved past that. They on paper they have 5 or 6 years of experience, excuse me, but really they have 1 year of experience 5 times, if that makes sense. They're just doing the same thing 5 times. And so this is something that I've been very aware of since the day I stepped into the industry. When I started in 2012, I was a pure iOS developer using Objective-C and Xcode, and I haven't done that for a while. I haven't done that in a couple of years. That professionally at least I haven't done that. So every step along the way, I've been sort of evolving my skill set into whatever is the most currently marketable, which right now is, as Eli said, Node, Express, and then React, Redux. He didn't mention that part. I don't think he's quite as up to date on the front end, but his point is still very valid. And I mean, that kind of supports his point. So, it's a very challenging situation. A lot of people enter the industry with the misguided notion that you learn the one thing and then you're ready to go. Kind of like a lawyer. Like, let's say you're practicing real estate law. Well, what do you need to learn? You need to learn the basics of legal practice to begin with, and then real estate law at the federal level, and then real estate law at the state and local level. And then as long as you don't move too frequently, you're pretty much good for probably your career. I mean, there's going to be changes, tax changes and things like that, but you're not going to have to learn a whole new set of legal rules and regulations every 2 or 3 years. That's just not what happens in the legal practice. Medicine, to a lesser degree, I would think it's the same. You learn the human anatomy, biology, things like that. And then as technological advancements push the boundaries of that, you might have to learn new tools and get better at using certain diagnostic tools and things like that, or like x-rays and stuff like that. But fundamentally, what you learned in medical school, let's say 10 years ago, you're still using today, and hopefully you're getting better at it, those same things today. Whereas in technology, I haven't even opened Xcode in several months, and Objective-C, I probably literally haven't coded it. Actually, no, I did code a little bit back in the spring, but that notwithstanding, I haven't coded Objective-C in like 3 or 4 years, and that's where I started learning. And then in between, there were things that I did that I no longer do, like Angular 1. I did Angular 1 professionally for about a year. That was a short-lived like part of my skill set. Um, and then I moved on to kind of where I'm at right now, React Redux. But it won't be long before I'm on to the next thing. Right now, React Redux is kind of having a long shelf life for me. I've basically done 2 full years of React Redux professionally. 2018, so 17, 18, yeah, a little bit around 2 years. So it's actually lasting a little bit longer than I would normally expect, which means pretty soon I'm gonna have to turn a corner and pick up the next thing. And that's what I want to get into in this video, is how do I make that determination? How do I stay relevant with the shifting tides of tech, new frameworks, new libraries, even new languages like Kotlin and stuff like that. Like, how do I stay relevant? What do I do? So my main guiding principles for me are a couple things. Number one, simply where is the demand on the hiring side? What are all the companies hiring for right now? Now, really what you want to do is you don't want to figure out what they're hiring right now. That's sort of the fallacy that everyone makes. That's the mistake everyone makes. You want to figure out what companies will be hiring for 18, 24 months from now, and then make your moves based on that. That's a bit of a tougher skill to cultivate, but with the proper, with the right focus, you can do it. I mean, there's a reason why I studied iOS in 2010, right? That was a very calculated decision. Now, how did I make that decision? How did I settle on that? I saw at 2010, if you can go back and kind of remember what the environment was like in 2010, iOS was just like taking over the planet, and the whole concept of an app was very new, very cutting edge, and very exciting. It was the sexy thing at that point. Like, that was like the cool thing that everyone was putting all their money into. And most importantly, all the VC money, the venture capital money that Eli alluded to towards the end of the clip, was just piling into iOS applications and iOS startups. Anything with iOS, you'd raise a VC round pretty easily. And I saw that, And I based my decisions on that because you had all these startups that were getting recently funded in 2010, 2011, 2012, probably going into about 2013 and 14, all going into native iOS applications, which meant there's going to be a huge demand for iOS developers because that money has to go into development. That's what amongst other things, that's what the money's for. So I saw that happening in 2010, and I made my decision based on that because I also came to the realization that iOS being so new didn't have a very large labor pool of developers because the platform just didn't exist for more than 2 years prior to that. So you literally couldn't be an iOS developer with more than 2 years of experience. It's physically impossible unless you built the iPhone, like unless you worked at Apple and built the iPhone. So that's how I made my decision to go into iOS development. Now that prism through which I make those decisions basically has never changed. Like I keep on making decisions based on that. So whenever I would go on Hacker News or Stack Overflow or even like LinkedIn maybe, well LinkedIn to a much lesser extent, but like Stack Overflow and Hacker News for example, let's say going into like 2013, right? I would look at all the hiring posts. There was a lot of Ruby on Rails, but there was also a lot of Node Express as well as Angular. At that point, it was just Angular 1, so mean stack. And that, like I saw an equal volume of that in terms of hiring posts, as well as seed-funded companies in Silicon Valley. So I would see like a high proportion of seed-funded startups in Silicon Valley hiring for mean stack developers. And then I cross-referenced that with the boot camps that were popping up all over New York City where I lived at the time. And what were they all teaching? They were all teaching Ruby on Rails. So all the startups that had Rails developers, which is a big number by the way, there were a lot of Rails developers, a lot of Rails jobs in the industry. Um, uh, I realized that there would be a healthy labor pool for that to satisfy that demand because of all these boot camps. At the time, I mean, there's still a lot, but there was even more back then because a lot of them have gone out of business since. But I had realized that, okay, I was really debating, like, should I learn Rails? Should I learn Django? Should I learn Node Express? Like, where should I focus my energy as far as web development goes? And once again, I made a calculated decision based on not where the demand is, but where the demand was going to be. Because, well, in this case, this is more of a supply-driven decision, but because there were so many boot camps teaching Ruby on Rails, even though there were startups hiring for Rails, um, all over Silicon Valley and New York City, I realized that there's going to be that's going to reach equilibrium faster than if I went mean stack. Because of all the startups that wanted to go full stack JavaScript. So I made the decision to go into mean stack, Node Express, and then Angular 1, and this is around 2014. And in the meantime, I'm also still doing iOS. So like at that, 2014 was an interesting year for me. I was doing a lot of iOS and like web development at the same time. But like I said, Angular 1 didn't last very long for me. Once 2015 came around, that's when I started hearing about React and React, and not Redux so much, but about halfway through 2015, I was hearing React, React, React over and over and over again, and I was hearing from the right sources, smart developers that I knew, and I saw that it was backed by Facebook, and I realized that all the startups, that were coming down the pipe in the next handful of years, they're all going to want to copy Facebook and Instagram and whatever else, right? Like they're going to want to emulate the sort of the industry leaders. That's just natural. That's what happens in most industries. So, and I also realized that Facebook would heavily push React into the marketplace. So it didn't take long to figure out, okay, this is a better move than Angular, to focus on React. This is all market driven. It's purely market driven. And so 2015, I would say, was the first year for me where I was actually 1 or 2 steps ahead of the curve. So usually I was like right on the curve. I was like right on the edge of the wave. This time I was ahead of it. So I decided to pour a lot of my time and energy into learning React and what was called Flux. Well, it's still called Flux, and then eventually Redux, based on my calculation that the Bay Area startups and New York City and Austin, Texas, and all those places would be hiring for React Redux developers, now, 2017, 2018, 2019. Once again, that has proven to be very accurate. And I've been basically living off that for the past 2 years, quite profitably because React and Redux is very difficult. Which sort of segues into my next point. The market dynamics are a major component of this. I would say the major component. But the next important thing is to make sure that what you're studying is simply difficult. It's just a hard thing to do, because otherwise the labor side will reach equilibrium faster. And so that factored into my decision as well, to a lesser extent, but it was a factor of my decision for like React Redux, for example. It quickly became clear to me that React Redux is much more difficult than, say, Angular 1 or really any, like, jQuery or whatever. What's the other one? Like Backbone? Yeah, I didn't really study Backbone, but those other client-side frameworks, React Redux was clearly more conceptually challenging. And so that for me was motivation, because I knew that if I had gotten good at that, it would insulate me from competition. It was just harder to find people who can do it because it's more difficult. And so that was, for me, that was a motivating factor. So I was like, all right, if I just get good at this, then startups are going to have a harder time finding people like me. And again, that's been proven to be accurate. And so that's a factor of your decision making as well. So very often people make sort of the misguided choice to pursue the path of least resistance. Find the easiest thing. Like, oh, study Rails. It's the easiest thing. Yeah, that's true. That means everyone else is doing the same thing, right? And what happens is you get all these people doing the same thing. What do you think is going to happen? Wages go down, and essentially what has happened in the past 5 years is going to continue happening in other areas of the stack. So what do I mean by that? In the past half decade or so, what used to be considered a sophisticated technical skill, Ruby on Rails with a SQL database or whatever, then deployed on Heroku, that used to be considered pretty sophisticated. Like, you're like a startup bro if you can do that. But now it's like, that's just middle class development. That's just a middle class developer now, because everyone's doing it. That's really easy. That's the easy thing to do, right? So in the past half decade or so, we've seen the emergence of a middle class of software engineers whom over 5 years ago would have been sort of at the top tier, not top 5%, but more like top 25%. Where they could command a high wage in the coasts. But today, no, because it's easy, and also all these people went into it, and that suppressed wages. So you kind of have to stay ahead of that wave. You kind of have to stay one step ahead of that. And so you should be intentionally looking for difficult things to study, to get good at. And so, for me last year, second half 2017, and like for about the following year after that, so that was all the entire AWS suite. So all the AWS stuff, S3, Elastic Load Balancer, auto scaling groups, getting good at all that, installing Linux or Ubuntu and stuff like that, and getting everything working, and scaling servers up and down, installing certbot for the SSL integration on Turbo, getting that to work properly, getting the renewals to go. Extremely difficult stuff. Way harder than programming, just regular programming, because you make a small mistake on your Nginx configuration, the whole server just breaks, right? There's much less room for error is what I should say. So the difficulty of learning that was a motivating factor, because now I have a skill set that's even harder than React, Redux, or really any kind of web development. And that's what you want to be thinking, like, okay, it's not just what's the trend, it's where is the difficulty level ratcheting up. And then it has to be, that analysis has to happen in conjunction with where are things going to be in demand. And where those two things intersect is where you want to be. And as long as you keep on doing that, then you dictate the terms. You decide how long you're in this game, as opposed to being one of those people that Eli was referring to, where you're just laid off and you've got nowhere to turn. and you're kind of screwed. That's going to happen to most people, by the way. That's how most people operate. Inertia is a very powerful force. So if you understand that, then that's how you can prepare yourself against it. Right. So today, October 2018, we're almost November. So what are those dynamics today? So by far, it's anything related to machine learning and artificial intelligence, um, any kind of you know anything in that neighborhood is where you want to be, because the demand for that is right now going to be through the roof. Again, check where all the investment money is going, and then you'll see that machine learning and AI startups that's where all the action is now. So when Eli is describing a scenario where it's like, oh, a Twitter, Snap, Instagram, like they're all laying off. Well, yeah, these are the sort of the older like startups that were all funded around 2011, 2012. That's when they received all their funding. That cycle is kind of on the tail end of that cycle. They're on the back nine. So what's the next cycle? It's going to be artificial intelligence, machine learning, and it's harder. It's harder than just regular REST API stuff. And so if you want to be in that game, that'll set you up for the next decade, and then from there you do whatever you want to do. But it's harder, but it's higher in demand. If you look at I'm a big sports fan, and right now, if you're especially if you look at a sport like baseball, it's currently the World Series. You'll see them always talking about analytics. They're always talking about analytics. That skill set has spilled over into the mainstream. It's no longer just a tech thing. They're always talking about analytics. All these like announcers and coaches and managers are discussing baseball analytics. Analytics is also within sports has also entered the NBA basketball, very much so. Not quite so much football, and I don't know a damn thing about hockey, so I can't tell you about that. But football, not so much. So there might be some room for growth there. But my point is, that's a high demand area in the next decade, because there are still teams or organizations in Major League Baseball who are way behind the curve as far as analytics goes. And they're going to have to catch up. Otherwise, they're just going to perpetually lose. And I know this because one of those teams is my favorite team, the New York Mets. Just a loser organization because they refuse to catch up to the times. Well, that's eventually going to stop because no one likes to lose money every season. So they're going to need to start hiring an analytics team. Now, I'm talking about just one industry, a very small one at that, Major League Baseball. But do you not think this is going on everywhere else in every industry? Do you not think that analytics and data science and statistical analysis within technical foundation is not happening in just about every other industry? Of course it is. And so if you can apply your skills to that, if you can present yourself as a skilled developer in that area, especially if you have some web background, you're setting yourself up for the next decade and not just sort of playing for the past 5 years, which is sort of what most people do. They're just like, oh, everyone says I need to know Ruby on Rails and I need to know jQuery, and so that I can get hired, to do, work on web development. That's not the future, man. That's the past. Like if you're already playing that, you're already behind. If that's the way you're looking at it. One thing there's a lot of things you have to look into it to make the proper decision. And I never really formally, sort of laid it out. It's all just sort of automatic at this point. But like, one thing is, what is the incentive of the marketing that you're reading, right? Like, when you see something like, take our boot camp and then get hired at $90,000 a year within 3 months, right? What is the underlying motivation behind that, right? That's pretty obvious, I would think. A more nuanced analysis is, when you go to these boot camp intro sessions and you go to these workshops and you see these actual boot camp students and whatnot, what is the quality of these people, right? On a macro level. I've met many boot camp students who are really smart and they could have done it on their own. They could have studied it at MIT or whatever. I've also just met a lot of stupid ones, probably more in that category than the other one. So what's going on there, right? Well, what's happening is companies are selling to whoever's buying, all right? And there was a pivotal point in my life where I had to make a decision whether or not I wanted to do that. This was late 2016, and I filled out a 6-month boot camp class with about 8 people. Um, yeah, I don't remember. It's like 7 or 8 people. And one of them was just not smart enough by a long shot. She just didn't have the horsepower. And man, she tried and she was like, I will work so hard. Like, I really, really want to do this. I really want to take your course. I want to become a developer. I'm going to work 10 times harder. And I couldn't do it. It was like making me feel sad. I felt sadness. And I was like, look, I can't take your money. Like, I gave her a full refund. I was like, I can't do this because it's not going to work for you. Like, or I didn't blatantly say it in those terms, but I was like, I kind of made a bullshit like, you're already behind. You needed to study for 3 weeks, 3 months on your own before you got here. So let me, just hold off on this and maybe we'll do another one, right? But really, I was thinking like, I can't take this poor woman's money, right? But there are many boot camps that gladly will, right? And you have to wonder whenever if you're exploring any of this, like just look at at a macro level, look at the overall quality of individual, right? And I kind of mentioned this in one of my other videos. You know, imagine their life without technology. Right? What are their options if technology wasn't a part of it? What are they coming from? And then that's uh, that's how you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. Um, so uh, people who sort of fall for that marketing never look a step ahead. They don't even know how to do that. They don't even understand those dynamics should be considered, right? Because they're too busy catching up to the now, and for them that's a Herculean task enough. For them, that's hard at just catching up to the now. But by the time you get there, that ship has sailed, right? Because it's going to take you at least 12 months if you're good, and more like 18 to 24 months if you're anywhere like most people, and including me. It took me around 18 to 24 months. By the time you get there, the ship is gone. You're behind again, and then you got to now study the next thing. Like you can be ready to do that, or you're gonna just accept that you're now in the programming middle class, and you traded in a $50,000 a year job for a $60,000 a year job. So um, I mean, that's the marketing. That's what's happening. That's the same thing happening in college. Everyone knows now that college is sort of a scam. Like, it's kind of common knowledge by now. Unless you're going to the top 10, top 5 colleges in the country, study this stuff on your own. I wish I didn't go to college, and I did go to an Ivy League school, and I wish I didn't go. I wish I just studied this on my own. I ultimately did that anyway. So um, kind of went on a tangent. I kind of lost track of my thought process. So let me just circle it back to the main point is that you need to focus on what's going to be in demand. And I already laid out a few ways you can do that. And then try to combine that with what is difficult. That's the sweet spot. Like, this is going to be in demand and this is going to be difficult. Get those two together, and then that's where you want to be. And if you do that, like I said, I laid out a couple, like the machine learning and data science and whatnot. A couple others like DevOps stuff, like anything with DevOps related. That's like containerization. That's huge right now. Anything with containerization and like or like the machine learning platforms like TensorFlow, right? Getting good with TensorFlow, great. That'll be a great move. Get on that. TensorFlow is definitely going to be around for a long time. Um, uh, or just getting good with like training your machine learning models in general. But that's just basic data science anyway, so it doesn't. I'm sort of going off on a tangent again. So get good at those things, and then you'll be setting yourself up for the next decade. And then, once that boom and bust cycle comes and goes, it's some other nonsense that we don't know what's coming down the pipe. But the point is, you will have taken advantage of the next one rather than trying to salvage what's left of the current one. And that's the way you want to look at it. And that's it. That's it. That's my take on Eli the Computer Guy's. Sorry for this spot. Um, his perspective on things, which again is very accurate, but that it's not like a death sentence. It's a matter of understanding that's what you need to expect, and then knowing like how to adjust. That's the important takeaway. Like if you expect this going in, and then you can prepare for it accordingly, you should be fine, just like I was. And then it's just a matter of how much do you want to keep doing that? How much do you want to keep on sort of reinventing yourself? I have to reinvent myself roughly every 2 years. So okay, so that's it. Before I go, I just want to make sure everyone can see this channel. Um, I just don't want to make it seem like I'm taking credit or anything like that. He obviously doesn't need my help. He's almost at 1 million subscribers, but this is his channel. Check it out. It's good stuff. It's pretty funny. Much more cynical perspective than me. If you think I'm cynical, just watch this guy. And yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, anything you want me to answer over email, shoot me an email right there. And whatever questions I get that fall within a broad set of categories, I will answer on the YouTube channel. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.